To be honest, like I got here and was seriously overwhelmed, and
Yeah,
I didn't realize how crazy the house would be, and like I didn't eat or sleep for like 3 days.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And then I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was like, I almost had like a breakdown, or I did.
No,
have a
all the
breakdown.
time. Yeah.
And
Welcome.
yeah, and I think I'm like a highly sensitive like person in terms of energy, because like
Yeah.
I feel like growing up I was always like as a kid, I would look at my friends and like I don't know, I just always felt like I wasn't good enough in a way. It was just kind of hard. And then I would try to prove myself with like tennis and like try to win and stuff. And then I started to hate tennis. And then I quit.
Yeah.
So that kind of like, I think is why it takes me like a little bit more to open up to people. Because like I think took everything personally and just like kept it inside of me because of that. Years and years of that.
Totally.
And now as like an adult through therapy, I've like figured out to like speak up for what I want. And like, it's like helped with everything in my life, from like work, friends, relationships, every aspect of my life. Like I have my power again.
Yeah.
And like, it's something like, as a kid that I wish I knew and like wish I had. And
Yeah, but
I don't even know if I'm making sense.
no, you are, and
I'm in this environment, I'm like,
no, you really are, and I think like I have like a little bit of a similar experience. My like mom and I are estranged. She didn't have the capacity to kind of like love me as a kid, and she was like really quick to take away love, like, oh, if you don't do this and that, like, you'll have to go live with your dad. And it's like, I don't ever want to lose my mom. Like, that was so scary for me. And then when I left for college, she like washed her hands of me and didn't want anything to do with me.
Sorry to hear
That's
that.
okay. But through a ton of therapy, I've kind of had to learn how to allow people to love me, because I never had an example of receiving it as a child. And like, I think the hardest part is like, I like love her like so much, but you can't always, like, she just can't be in my life. She just doesn't have the tools to love me back.
Damn, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's honestly like, I've had like so much anxiety from it, but from that I've built like a ton of humor, and I think I have a lot of grace for other people, but it's really hard with dating, and I have like a lot of fears, honestly.
Have you ever heard of like inner child work?
Yeah, like to reparent yourself and
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's changed my life.
It's really rare to meet a man who appreciates therapy.
Yeah, no.
Because I feel like you understand. So like when Hayden was like, you're rough around the edges, so I was like, to you, yeah, I am, because you're a ass bitch. But like, that is what I was terrified of hearing. Like, something about me is wrong, and I am too rough and tough.
Yeah, like he doesn't deserve for you to open up to him. Like, those are his issues he's projecting onto you.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, I knew there was something about you, and that was like my intuition, I think. And I'm really glad, like, I listened to it, and I feel like this is like all the validation I need.